Just getting Instagram online. There's always a little bit of a delay on that one. Hello all. Thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome to the Idaho Sheriff Livestream broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. I'm your co-host and producer, Donna Wilson, here to screen your questions and comments. We're here to discuss all things liberty without compromise. And we are the only flim-flam free broadcast in all of Kootenai County. We're going to continue to be the one and only. Take a moment right now to share this live stream to your profile and to send your questions or comment through to Dan. Put them into the comment section on whichever platform you're joining us tonight, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. For the most interactive full screen experience, be sure to watch on Facebook or YouTube. If that Instagram's giving you issues, come right on over to Facebook or YouTube. We'll also stick around later past the hour tonight. If we've got questions, we'll stick around to answer them. For those listening back on our podcast, thank you so much. Anyone can listen and subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you get your shows. Make sure to go do that tonight. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Idaho Sheriff. And remember to like and follow our Facebook page. Now here's the only sheriff candidate in Kootenai County endorsed by Sheriff Richard Mack, retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, former heavyweight champ David Nino Rodriguez, and backed by both current and retired law enforcement from all over the West Coast. And right here in Kootenai County, this is Dan Wilson.
Can you feel the excitement in the air right here in Kootenai County? Can you feel it around the country? We're on the cusp of major changes taking place, not only globally, but nationally and here locally in Kootenai County. Now, we don't know what's going to happen nationally. There's been a lot of chatter back and forth. There's a lot of angst on both sides. I know that things are getting more and more peculiar all the time. I know that food prices are out of control. Things are not the way we would like to normally.
We see more videos of kids in their 20s hedging on 30, crying, saying, you know, for those of you who are out making it on your own, please help me understand how you're doing this, because this is not the world I'm living in. My parents, they're working some 2 jobs and admitting my parents are helping me out. Yeah. So it's not for lack of effort or a lazy generation. No,
this is what happens when you spend out of control. And this happened not only under Republicans, but it has happened under the Democrats. In fact, they have both groups have come together to not fix problems, but to accentuate the problems and to cause us a lot of problems right here. Now, 20 days away, as I said, Kootenai County residents, are you ready to change the current leadership at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office? Are you tired of the lack of leadership of the existing buffoon wearing the uniform with the drop leg holster?
Are you just tired? Mudslinging?
I'm saying facts and truths. And if people don't like that, then they need to grow a thicker set.
Now, election integrity.
Yeah.
I know I cut you off from your your rant you were on. Yeah. Oh, first off, Steve over on YouTube, thanks for joining us tonight. He says he's got lots of questions, so I'm thinking he's gearing up to start rapid firing those. Election integrity. There was an opportunity in Kootenai County to head down to the elections office earlier this week. Tell us about that, because you and I checked in on that process when they run kind of like a dummy bunch of ballots through.
It's a mini ballot check. So they check them out with the various machines by districts, and then they check what the tally of the machines come up with versus the hand printed out rechecks. And so it's kind of a check and a balance. And yeah, it was a neat little gathering. We were in a very small room. And once you know, my very dearest leader, the one that I just think that is the greatest fraudulent leader of Kootenai County ever, Special Deputy County Commissioner Bruce Matari, was sitting there, as well as Clerk Jen Luck. And they were at a table right in front of us. We had to stand right behind them. That's where we were ushered into, overlooking. And once you know,
you were within spitting distance.
Bruce behaved himself the entire time. He didn't have any special little nicknames for me. Didn't have any special little comments.
And didn't call you a cupcake this time.
So, we were down there and we are watching very closely. Now, I want to tell you something that I hope you're going to listen to. A couple things. Number one, if you are voting early, that's awesome. Remember to check the box. Dan Wilson, the independent candidate for Kootenai County Sheriff. I had a lady come up to me today inside a grocery store, and I hear faintly, Dan, Dan, Dan. And I turn around, and this little old lady, she says to me, she says, are you Dan Wilson? And I said, well, yes, I am. And she says, I want to tell you that yesterday, 15 of us went down together to vote early, and all but 3 voted for Dan Wilson. So 12 out of 15 in this lady's group voted for Dan Wilson.
Those are our polls right there, ladies and gentlemen.
And she said, and we're inside the store, and people are hearing this as they're walking around. And what I thought was outstanding is she says, we need real leadership with the hard times that are coming, and we want you in the position of sheriff. Now, if you are voting by absentee ballot, here's a suggestion for you. We have seen a recent challenge, I think, that just came out. I don't have the article in front of me, but there is speculation of interference with the ballots, mail-in ballots, through possibly the Postal Service, USPS. Now, I don't know the facts, so I'm not going to speculate, but I want to remind you that if you're going to vote by absentee, please take the absentee ballot and hand deliver it to the election office. It's not that hard, or get somebody else to do it. Within the confines of the law, I better be careful because I know that you're not supposed to drop off ballots for other people, but you need to get down there and eliminate any interference going through the U.S. mail.
Are there other ballot drop boxes in other locations, or is it just U.S. mail?
I'm only going to, well, if you're going to mail it in, it has to go through the mail.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So
the way to eliminate all those, the
go directly.
Margin of error,
go directly.
Just go down.
Yeah. But remember, and I'm still getting this question asked, do we have to write your name in? And the answer is no. I'm one of 4 sheriff candidates that's on the ballot. Now, every ballot is going to rotate. The names aren't going to appear in the same order for everybody's ballots, and that's part of our process. So pick Dan Wilson, not any of the other ones. You want the man who has a vision and is ready. What do we got?
No, pick Dan Wilson, not any of the other ones.
Not any of the other ones, yeah. So,
that's why we're here tonight.
But remember, if you are tired of politicians and career government employees that have done nothing else but work for the public, they haven't experienced what you have had to do in the non-public sector, where your job isn't secure, where you don't have very good benefits, where it's tough to get the wages where they need to be. If you're tired of politicians who have spent their lifetime in government service forgetting what it's like to be one of us, if you're looking for a man that has been tried by fire for many years, that has run successful businesses for 25 years, that has created hundreds of jobs, balanced my budget, maintained my business structure, while I was also being a free police officer, a volunteer police officer for my communities at no cost to my communities. The cost was all of mine, with the same liability, the same requirements when I put on my badge and my uniform and I drove my patrol car to your calls. Then it's time to pick Dan Wilson as the only man that is right for this job at this time and place in history in Kootenai County that can lead this department, not only clean up the mess on the inside of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office with morale, with problems with 911 that's hemorrhaging, and we're going to talk about that here in a little while, and somebody that understands what it's like to be a police officer, that can empathize with those that are doing the job. There is nobody better suited and ready to lead this county and the people than Dan Wilson.
Kootenai County was robbed of the opportunity for a debate between Dan Wilson and Bob Norris. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that invitation, if there had been a fair debate proposed, may have also included the other candidates for sheriff, because there are in total 3 independent candidates against
actually,
Bob Norris.
I heard that one couldn't campaign because there was some legal issue in their personal life. And so I really think that the only look, there's only been two people who have really actively campaigned, Bob Norris and Dan Wilson. So I think it would just been us.
It's correct. I mean, the most fruitful debate would have been between those two candidates, Norris and Wilson. And we were robbed of that opportunity. Today, KHQ came out and did an interview. And now that the local media is getting involved in this race here in the last few weeks, it allows us to see the candidates more side by side,
Sure.
demeanor, body language, how they answer questions, how they're presenting what their strengths are. And KHQ, I thought, did a fair and decent job at an interview today where they fairly asked candidates the same questions.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a great piece. I want to be able to show that. It's about a 6.5-minute segment.
You can show the whole thing?
That we'd like to share at least that or part of with you guys. And then I'd love to have you respond to that once we put that up there.
Sure.
But here's Dan getting interviewed in that earlier today. So yeah, let's put that up there and at least get to part of this and see
All right.
part
I'll
of it
follow
side
your
by
lead,
side.
producer.
Okay.
Who will be the next sheriff of Kootenai County? That is a decision you'll make at the polls this November. So here are your options. Current Sheriff Bob Norris, he's Republican. He began his term as sheriff in January of 2021. He has a 30-plus year law enforcement career. Sheriff Norris has worked patrol, custody, narcotics, gangs, investigations, counterterrorism, and emergency preparedness. Sheriff Norris is an active supporter of the Second Amendment and supports concealed carry. Dan Wilson is a lifelong resident of the community. He's running as an independent. Dan has served for 12 years as a commissioned reserve police officer from 2011 to 2023 in the greater Spokane area. He's been a commercial general contractor and commercial casework contractor for almost 25 years. He owns a physical security consultant firm. He's also an active shooter survival instructor. Kyle Woodward has lived in Kootenai County for 20 years. He's running as an independent. Woodward wants to foster a culture of trust and transparency so crimes don't go unreported. Woodward strongly believes in the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments. A major focus for Woodward is growth in Kootenai County. He wants to build a substation in Athol for faster response times. And the final candidate on your ballot is Justin Nagel. He's running as an independent. He was born in Coeur d'Alene and grew up in Rathdrum. He worked in an underground mine, led a security team in Phoenix, and eventually developed a career as a carpenter. Nagel has been involved in the Rathdrum Lions Club, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and Ducks Unlimited. Today, Sheriff Bob Morris, Dan Wilson, and then Kyle Woodward all sat down with Nonstop Local's John Webb. Justin Nagel never returned John's calls for an interview. All three candidates discussed issues affecting the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. And John joins us in Kootenai County right now. Good evening, John.
Hey, good evening. The candidates touching on several issues impacting Kootenai County residents as well as the Sheriff's Office itself. I asked all of the candidates the same questions. My first question, what makes you qualified to be sheriff? We begin first with Sheriff Norris.
Certainly I have the qualifications, and certainly my resume for the last 4 years qualifies me to be sheriff. I'm the only candidate in this race that has worked in a jail, supervised in a jail, and been a middle manager in a jail. I'm the only candidate in this race that has worked patrol, been a field training officer in patrol, been a sergeant supervisor in patrol, been a lieutenant in patrol, and actually had 2 contract cities in which I was the de facto chief of police for those 2 small cities.
What I bring to the table as sheriff is not only a vast experience in business and administration of over 25 years, but also 12 years of valuable law enforcement experience where I served my community thousands of hours at no cost and took on all the same liability and responsibilities at no cost serving my community. And I love law enforcement, I love the community, and I love to serve.
I believe that I'm qualified for this position because I'm a member of the community. I've been a member of the community for almost 20 years now, and I really grew up here. I have a very deep understanding of the culture and the community and a lot of the problems.
Okay, so we can play this a little more through.
We can do that, or also just head to the KHQ website, and I can link to that from our site, and you can see that full interview. The reporter did a great job.
I want to say something about Kyle Woodward. For a kid, and I call him a kid because he's my kid's age. Very articulate, sharp young man. Kootenai County, you are fortunate to have him in your community. He is a very valuable individual. I've gotten a chance to meet with him face to face, and man, I sure like him.
We have some questions coming in. I just want you to know, go ahead and continue entering those into the comment section, and we're going to get over those. I do want to let you know if it's not a legitimate question. So for the most part, we're putting the questions out there, hard, easy, ones that Dan's been asked 100 times. If it's something that's not helping move the discussion forward, or it's disparaging in nature, we do reserve the right to pass over those. So
you're
just so
anti-free speech.
It might be.
You're anti-free speech.
Well, last week we had a guy that it was on an unrelated topic, and something that should have been, it was based on a previous private
well, not only that, but he's a
conversation or text back and
professional
forth.
too. So you don't expect that kind of behavior out of professionals.
Yeah,
and
it was
when they
juvenile.
act that way, I'm done.
Yeah. So just keep the questions respectful, even if they're tough, and even if you're pro Norris, that we're all good to go. So you just let me know when you're ready to start tackling.
So I want to
some
talk
of those.
about signs. We still have a few signs left. I just ordered another 100 because we went through 200 last week. If you need a little yard sign, there's 3 places inside Kootenai County you can get those yard signs. One is at Survival Enterprise up there in Hayden off of Government Way. There's Mike and the Patriot Hangout right across from Costco to the south there in Coeur d'Alene. And then Westwood Guns up in Rathdrum. Duke has a stack of them as well. We are looking for a few more locations for our double-sided 6x6 banners. They're all up over the county. And so if you have a special high visibility spot, you want one of those big banners, contact us, info@theidahosheriff.com. We'll hook you up. We'll consider what you've got. If you want a yard sign, go out and get them. If you can't go get them, we have team members that can bring them to you. So
you can also donate securely online. Donations have been up this week. People are listening
thanks,
to the
Steve.
message, finding
We just got yours.
inspiration. Yeah. So securely online on our website at theidahosheriff.com. And that'll go straight to signs and other forms of getting the message out in the last few weeks that we have.
if you're current law enforcement or past law enforcement and you want to add your name to those that support Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff, you can also submit that directly to info@theidahosheriff.com. We'll talk to you, but the list is growing, and there is absolutely no shame. I've been let's say, tasked by the FOP, they're incensed. They say, well, you have a lot of Californians that are supporting you, and you've been disparaging to California cops. Just those that are personally friends of Bob Norris from California. You know who you are. You are those that came out right from the very beginning, and you forget that the resources that I have at my fingertips, I knew who you were. You happen to be friends with current command staff. You moved up here at the same time. You retired at the same time. Wait.
Clarify what resources you have at your fingertips, because
you've
been accused of that too. What are you talking about, young man?
I have law enforcement friends all over the continental United States.
You're not improperly using some kind of secret access that you have.
But I know that the conspiracy. So anyway, if you're from California, Kalamazoo, Texas, Florida, wherever you want to support us, let us know and we'll add your name.
Are you ready for some questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. And then keep in mind, as we're tackling questions, or if we've moved on to another segment, you can continue to put those into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching. And also a reminder, share this live stream as it's happening right now to your feed so your other friends and family can join in. A question from, let's see, Steve, who said he had lots. I'm trying to skip to one that is a legitimate question. Where did it go? Explain to me how pulling people over to ask if they're carrying a large amount of cash is keeping everyone safe.
I agree with you. I think that's uncalled for. This is part of the war on drugs that I'm absolutely in belief that it's a failure. I don't think that we should have to explain why we're traveling with whatever amounts of cash we are. That's personal. You know, this fact that they can seize money like they've been doing over the years, to me, is absolutely unacceptable. And so, no, I don't think that it's an acceptable practice for law enforcement to be seizing any money if there's no crime. If there's a true crime and it seized for evidence, then so be it. But devoid of that, no. I mean, I think people should be able to travel freely with their money, and it's yours. If it's yours, it's yours.
Moving on to the next question, we've got Gary joining us from YouTube. And like I said, there are some questions that Dan has been asked 100 times or more. And we have an amazing search engine function on our website where you can go in and type keywords like Dan's background and experience, and then including past episodes, past live stream broadcasts where he's answered these questions.
Don't you know that Catherine has been telling everybody again after a year that I have zero law enforcement experience? I've never driven my own patrol car. I've never made arrests. I've never booked evidence. I've never written warrants. I mean, oh my goodness, what am I even here for?
I think you were in a sidecar on chips. Like
that would have been awesome. I love chips. I even had the little helmet as a kid and a big wheel. It was awesome.
Okay, Gary, thank you seriously for joining us on YouTube. He says, I've heard that you were just patrol. What experience does that bring to be operating at the sheriff level? And I'm taking this as a respectful question. So that was not intended to make fun of the question.
Well, first of all, after 12 years of doing the job, I understand how things work. And while I have not been a sheriff or chief of police or a lieutenant, the position of sheriff is one of administration. So the sheriff is the representative of the people. In fact, our state law has made it so that it's very important that there aren't a lot of criteria for a representative, just the same as for county commissioners and other elected positions, state reps. I mean, state reps are in charge of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. But they don't have to have an accounting degree. So what you want is a sheriff that not only sets the policies and meets the needs of the people, but also has a true administrative background. And I have that. So while I don't have captains and lieutenants, I've had enough staff over the years running my businesses and subcontractors and other vendors. I understand how to surround myself with subject matter experts. That's how I was successful in business, because at a very early age, I learned how to put the best and brightest around me and follow their advice. Now, I have an undersheriff that has been chosen since almost the beginning when I got in the race back in January. This individual is current law enforcement in Kootenai County, is very well loved, and this individual will be an outstanding undersheriff. My transition team that's already assembling will also help us in the first 90 days and on into 6 months, get everything lined up. But I'm going to surround myself by those that understand the day-to-day operation. So in my business, I don't know how to do everything. I own a cabinet shop, never built a cabinet in my life, but I have sold millions of dollars worth of casework over the years. And same thing in Kootenai County. I will surround myself with those that give me the advice and assist me in turning Kootenai County Sheriff's Office into the greatest agency that Kootenai County has seen in several lifetimes.
Do you think that having that outside perspective is in fact an asset, as opposed to, because people say, well, how can you operate a jail if you've never specifically done that job? And I know that you're somewhat answering that question. But how is it an asset coming in with a perspective outside with business and different industries and an outsider's perspective outside of career law enforcement, career government work? Well,
let's look at the sheriff's office as basically two sides. You have the resource side, the office side. That is your manpower. That's all your employees, both sworn and unsworn. It is your buildings, your equipment, all your inventory, all your policies, procedures, all of that. If you don't have that in order, you can't serve the public. Now, the other side of the sheriff's office is the actual mission of why the sheriff's office exists, and that is to serve the people, to maintain the peace, the rule of law right here in Kootenai County. And without this, the mission, none of this other stuff matters. So in business, we in business understand the entire administrative side. We know that our employees are hands down our greatest resource, period. And if you don't have a good culture where people want to be there, then it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. Just like they've had to recently petition the Board of County Commissioners I'm going to get all my numbers mixed up, $260,000 in retention bonuses for 911 for about a dozen operators because they can't keep people in there because of the toxic environment. So why is it good to have somebody like me in this office? Well, because I haven't been a career cop where I only see everything from the perspective of just law enforcement. Bob Norris has now been in law enforcement, including his sheriff run, for almost 40 years. He's never worked in the private sector. He's never not been a government employee. So he doesn't understand really the entirety of how important it is to maintain and select good people in command to run a tight ship. His policies are a mess. We've pulled policies from the entire agency. The copies that I've received, several of them are in edit mode. We know that the helicopter program is a mess. He doesn't understand what he's doing there. It's very obvious with the license plate readers. We have determined through public records that despite the fact that he had already purchased these cameras for 36 patrol vehicles and was already in demo mode through August, in fact, I think it officially ended in September, pending an approval of the $105,000 contract. But Bob Norris didn't even have a policy, past or present, to control how that data is kept, how deputies access and don't access it. So you have a guy that, yeah, he's a cop. I have carpenters that are master tradesmen, but just because they are master tradesmen, outstanding carpenters doesn't mean that they have the capacity to be a manager and or a supervisor or a project manager or so on and so forth. So Bob Norris, just because I was listening to him rattle off all of his qualities, well, I've worked in the jail and I'm the only one that's worked in patrol and I've served as all these things. Okay, so what? That doesn't mean you're a subject matter expert. Doesn't mean that you're competent at it.
Well, I was going to say, did he do them well?
In fact, in sheriff's offices, you have multiple people to pick up the slack for. You've been labeled, Bob, as a slug by peer review. We've seen the peer reviews. I have personally seen peer reviews from those that worked with him in LA that said he was a slug. We know that he was tight with Baca and Tanaka. So do the math there. But yeah, you want somebody that truly understands a whole approach to what it means to run an organization that has literally negotiated contracts, started budgets from scratch, dealt with personnel. Anyway.
That leads to the next question from Kyle on Facebook. What is the plan to get more dispatchers? Because you alluded to the fact you're down in the jail. You talked about 911.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
For the 911 operators? Well, I would love to tell you that, but I will not. I will tell you that I guarantee I will fix the problem in 90 days. And my transition team and I have already come up with our solution. But because Bob steals so much of what I'm putting out, and we know this by a weekly basis, he's even using my own verbiage now. Did you notice that he's starting to use interposition?
I did.
And interpose?
Yeah.
So Kyle, I would love to tell you, but I absolutely 100%, where's my thing?
Absolutely, 100%.
Can guarantee you that I am going to fix this 911 issue.
Kyle.
But anyway. Yeah.
So I guess on this, it's a matter of trusting that you have a plan to lead, that you have already surrounded yourself with a team, that you're not just blowing smoke when you say you have an undersheriff in place that everybody's going to love, that has the proper experience. If people are concerned about specifically the roles that you've had in law enforcement, there you have all of that in place. Yeah,
and I'll shoot everybody straight. The idea did not originate 100% with me. It was more the advice of the to-be undersheriff, and I think that it's a brilliant idea. And from a businessman standpoint, it makes perfect sense, and we're going to execute that.
Toggling over to, there's going to be a question on Instagram. One of you over on Instagram said, I need a shirt.
Oh, yeah.
You can go to our website, theidahosheriff.com, click on the apparel button. There are shirts, t-shirts, hoodies, hats, I think even mugs, and you can get a scarf for your dog. So there's that. A question from Mike on Instagram. What is your take of January 6th? And that's not going to be, we're not getting a shovel and digging super deep on this one, but for people that want to know where you stand, thoughts on that.
My belief is that the majority of those that were there at January 6th were your fellow citizens that were there exercising their guaranteed First Amendment rights. I believe there is more than enough evidence that points to the fact that there were federal agitators in there that were doing everything from leading people inside so-called secured buildings to those that were out actually provoking people in attendance there. So I believe that it was a massive setup. I think if you even look at the pipe bomb and the fact that they can find anybody and everybody, but they can't find the individual that planted that, and the timelines don't show up. And I mean, there's a lot of controversy around that. But here's what I really don't like. I don't like the fact that just a few months earlier, during the summer of love, I don't know what you call it, they were burning cities to the ground in extremely liberal areas. And those people that were violating the law, that were not peacefully protesting, destroying property, killing people, those people were not really held accountable as far as I can tell. However, people that were trespassing on the Capitol were rounded up. We know that the FBI took assets off of all sorts of other investigations, to include human trafficking, and they placed them all to go after anybody that was associated with that January 6th event. And many of your fellow Americans, despite the fact that we're guaranteed in the Bill of Rights to due process, they were not given due process. Some of them were held indefinitely without even being able to access an attorney or being told what their charges are, held in solitary confinement. Now, we know that the FBI loves to instigate things. And in fact, if you look at the Governor Whitmer kidnap plot that happened just a few short months before January 6th, you'll find that out of those 20 actors, I believe it was 12 of them were actually on the federal payroll. So we know that the FBI and other federal agencies love to set people up, especially if you are opposed to their agenda. So I believe that the January 6ers, many of them that, in fact, I'm going to make this statement, if they were not involved in any violent act or destruction of property, because if they were, then they do deserve to be charged and to face a jury of their peers. But anybody else that was not, I think they should have done the same thing that they did with most of those that were caught helping burn cities down to the ground, and, let them go. And we know that from the Fisher decision that just came out recently with the Supreme Court that many of those individuals were erroneously charged with a crime that did not fit with the actions that they took. So that's my view on January 6th. And I think that it's been a travesty what has happened to many people when they've been deprived of their due process.
While this is a flim-flam free broadcast, but we know that Bob Norris is not flim-flam free.
No.
And so coming up in a little bit, we're going to be talking about exactly some of those things that he's even come out with today. Dan's going to be addressing that. First, I'm going to hit another question. And then again, if you've just joined us, put your questions right into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching, and we're going to get those over in the queue to Dan. So from Gary watching on YouTube tonight,
hey, Gary.
Is there really sex trafficking in our county, or is it more along the lines of social media luring and exploitation of minors? And I think there's been an event earlier this week that created some confusion in this category, because I think for the majority of us, we have this idea sex trafficking is there's going to be kids in the back of a U-Haul and they're being transported, or there's underground tunnels and they're being taken across the border from one state to the next. And then it's this whole like underground world and that's the definition we have in our mind. So what fits that category? Because maybe now we're more confused than ever.
It's all of the above. If anybody is forced into any kind of slavery against their will, even if they're being continually doped up, anybody that is forced to perform certain sexual acts or that are dependent on somebody else supplying them with their drug of choice, even taking kids, as we just said. So if you look at state statute, and I believe that Nate Lewis from The Innocent came out and spoke at an event for North Idaho Freedom Fighters on Monday, and he alluded to the fact that that organization is supplying law enforcement with the tools in order to find predators regarding children. But here's what we do know. Bob Norris has come out and he's given us these stupid stats to prove that, well, there's no human trafficking. And when you listen to him fumble through his 6 pages of yellow notebook, legal size, notes, you'll quickly determine that what he's talking about is word salad. It is relating to contacts that were made through patrol and other basic levels of investigation. But what Nate was talking about is, well, for example, what they did is they put out a decoy here not too long ago. And in this decoy, they posted online selling a 12-year-old for extremely heinous acts. And within, I think it was 1 day, there were 60 men, individual hits, that attempted to purchase this child. You think that human trafficking doesn't exist? Parents selling their children here? As Nate said, men will come from other states because it's easy to travel out of your own network. You're less likely to be seen. But that's only one facet. I talked to another organization who has saved 9 women who were trafficked outside of Kootenai County. They were lured into Kootenai County. In Kootenai County, they were lured out. And they were sex trafficked, all the way down to California, Nevada, Western Washington. So it happens in all sorts of varieties. I think that it was interesting when I talked with Nate, and Nate gave me permission to say this last week, that he took this evidence that he had of the attempted abduction, the attempted rape of this 12-year-old child that, again, it's a decoy. And he took that evidence and some other evidence to Sheriff Norris, along with a state representative. I think it was a senator. And Norris flat out said, I don't want to see this until after the election. And he said he didn't want to do that because he knew that Dan Wilson was going to rub it in his face. Now, I got that directly from Nate Lewis, who gave me permission to state that. Now, Nate was a gentleman. He didn't say it the other night. But human trafficking takes place in all sorts of forms, as Donna said earlier. It's not just kids in the back of U-Hauls. It's not kids that are being taken and brought into Kootenai County or taken out. In fact, we had a incident here a couple of years ago where a local attorney attempted to abduct a young child off the docks in Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene PD was brought in when citizens acted and saw this odd behavior, and then they didn't make the charge. They forced the employees of this business that was there, where those employees interdicted and saved this kid and called law enforcement. They made them make the arrest. It does happen here. And despite whatever word salad or stats that Bob wants to do, or any of the other folks around here, it is happening. You folks have to be the determiner whether or not you're going to believe Bob Norris and his denying that human trafficking has existed for the past year. I find no evidence of human trafficking taking place. Or, now it moves towards, it's by definition, but kind of, sort of, not really. And
he's learned that he needs to ask when the question's asked, well, what's your definition of human trafficking? Yeah. Because I've learned that I need to ask that question. One of the questions the other night, because I think it's so, when people realize that their sitting sheriff is telling you your community is safe and there's no evidence of sex trafficking, human trafficking in Kootenai County, they want to believe the person in charge, that when they're saying that, they're telling you the truth. And it makes you feel good and it makes you feel safe that you're in a safe community. Yeah. One of the questions the other night when Nate Lewis from the Innocent Organization was saying that they ran that sting and how many hits they got on that in that short period of time, one of the questions that came back from the members in the audience there was, well, do you have the IP addresses of where those hits were coming from? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I get that it was a gotcha question because, well, how do you know those weren't coming from some other state? Because they still just don't want to believe this is happening in Kootenai County. And Nate's response, it was, he was gentle with it, but it's people are willing, if it's Spokane as opposed to Kootenai County, people are willing to drive the 20 minutes across the border to get what they want when that was the intention. Yeah. So that still isn't putting us ahead, and we don't have a sheriff, a current sitting sheriff, who is doing anything proactive. No. Reading off stats of crimes that are already on the books.
Well, he wasn't even willing to support the Internet Crimes Against Children task force here locally. That's a absolute fact. He was given that opportunity, and I believe it's Post Falls PD that is actively assigned a couple detectives. Now, I'm going to change that because I will work with groups similar to the Innocent and Nate. Whatever we can get from the public to help us do our job so that we can then seal the deal, we're going to do. And I'm going to assign detectives specifically to help us in this effort to prosecute and to eradicate any form of human trafficking. I don't care if it's children. I don't care if it's women. I don't care if it's those that come from out of country and are here working as slaves or being drug around by cartels. All forms of human trafficking are unacceptable.
I think that leads into what some of your plans, the first 90 days in office and then on into the first year. But I want to do one more question that's in this vein because I think it's an important one. Does a sting count as evidence if it was never real? Is that entrapment or does it count as evidence?
It's intent.
And that's one thing that Nate Lewis presented very well, was that in, I believe it's Idaho Code, it talks about what all is under the umbrella of human trafficking and the intent. I mean, that was an important word.
Yeah. And I think we've seen this a lot through social media clips where you have these crusaders that will go out and, they will do the legwork and then they bring law enforcement in. And even though there wasn't a child, it's still the intent was to commit a crime for indecent purposes, to name just a bare level. So what are your plans? Here we are. We're 3 weeks from election night. Yeah. I heard it said earlier today. In 3 weeks, we're going to be counting ballots. Yeah, you guys excited?
So when you're in there and you're at the helm, is it going to take you time to ramp up? Or are you going to be getting acclimated the first year? Or are you going to hit the ground running?
Well, we're going to hit the ground running. The transition team and I are already working on what we're going to do the first week, the first month, the first 90 days, the first 6 months. Some of the things that we're going to do is, I said it before, we are going to fix the 911 problem in the first 90 days. And I think that the deputies are going to love that situation, using current resources at our fingertips in order to facilitate stopping this hemorrhaging and the culture that is causing this hemorrhaging. Number two, I'm going to, and I'm kind of saying these out of order, but number two, tonight, I'm going to start that citizens posse. And no, we're not putting badges and guns on individuals and telling them to go out and be vigilantes.
Say it again for the people in the back row.
No badges, no guns, to go out and be vigilantes. I had this question actually asked today at a coffee shop. Here's what we're going to do. If you are a medical professional, if you know how to work radios, if you know how to can, if you know how to dig ditches, if you're an electrician, if you're an engineer, you have a special skill set. We want to know what that is because we are going to break this entire county up into areas of expertise in any kind of man-made or natural event, as we have seen in North Carolina in the past couple weeks. The continued struggle of those people to rebuild and to find their loved ones and to recover. It's been greatly hampered, as we have heard, by the federal government, who's been saying for the past 10 months, when a natural disaster comes, it's not the federal government that's going to save us. Not anymore. It's not the state government. Who is it? We, the people, right here in person. Nobody's coming. It's up to us. And it's absolutely crucial. Bob Norris has had 4 years to articulate to the public. We've already seen the dangers on the horizon. We are susceptible up here to earthquakes and fire. I know last week they said, well, it's not earthquakes. Yeah, we most certainly are susceptible to earthquakes. wildfires, earthquakes, it doesn't matter. We must have a plan of action, how to spring into not only help and recover, but also how to secure our own county from those that would come into our county to try to deprive people of life, liberty, and property. So the posse is going to be formed. I'm going to call for an audit, a forensic audit. I'm going to go to the county commissioners. I'm going to implore them to fund a budget and an inventory of the entire sheriff's office. I want to know every piece of equipment. I want to know where every expenditure has been. We're going to analyze it. We're going to find out if money has been improperly spent, where we can cut, how we can better optimize our options. We're going to be looking at grants. If they have strings attached, they're gone. This sheriff's office will not be controlled by any other agency, federal law enforcement, or government who tells us we must sell part of who we are for a little piece of the pie.
So it's not that you're against grants or you cut all of that and you're immediately lopping off a bunch of resources, but it really is doing the thorough investigation as to what has strings attached so that you can run that department independently without government coming in and saying, because we did this.
Yeah, we're supposed
You're
to
gonna
be
do that.
Again, separate. You know, we're our own entity, but we're accountable to other entities, but not controlled by other entities. And so I want to maintain the autonomy of the sheriff's office. We're also going to implement my deputy reserve program. Idaho law allows us to be able to get former law enforcement and to bring them on board in pretty rapid pace. And we're going to start getting those that want to join our deputy reserve program. We're going to bring them on board. That's going to be a force multiplier. Bob Norris has failed to do this. I think he didn't even care about it until he started hearing me talk about it. And then he tried saying, well, Wilson, we can't do this academy because, you know, Boise Post took it away from us. And, you know, all this word salad again. I'm using word salad a lot tonight, but it really was. But he's just saying that because he wants to throw, you know, mud or obstacles in my way. You should have been thinking about that, Mastermind Matari. I mean, it was really clear. Reserve officer, you know, no command experience, could read the statute and figure out that we are more than capable. And by the way, every time he tries to say you have to work, you have to get paid, well, guess what? We can offer $1 a year like they did in
Do
California.
you think it's really... Do you think it's really an issue that they never wanted reserves in the first place, that there's an elitism mentality, both that happens with your deputies, and then also it's a trickle down from your leadership that somebody who does this part-time cannot possibly be reliable.
Well, look, I'm not going to get into that part. That's a different topic for a different day, but let's break it down this way. If you are bringing law enforcement professionals, you know, folks from California, work for LAPD, work for Kern County or Orange County or you name it, and spent 20, 30 years or 10 or 15 years on the streets. Look, that's valuable experience. No different than if you work in Travis County, Texas, or if you work in Fort Lauderdale or wherever. If you've had years of experience on the street, that is a benefit to us. Now, yeah, I'm certain that there can be some, you know, buckle bouncing.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I think that you answered the value that they bring to the department, which really is of most interest to the citizens of Kootenai County. And then also, do you think it can alleviate some of the strain on the budget?
Well, of course, that's why I'm doing it. Yeah. That's why I'm doing it, is because
but
we
you're
don't
not
have
compromising.
No. This is a lie that's been perpetrated by the Matari Norris campaign. Oops, did I just say Matari? I meant Special Deputy Matari and Norris, since, you know, one works for the other, or is it the other way around? Yeah, we're going to bring a robust, in fact, I've had many discussions with former law enforcement that want to be a part of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. It's a great plan. My volunteer services, remember, I've already said that I'm going to cap my salary at $99,000 a year, return the remaining portion to go back towards my new volunteer service division that I will be forming so that we have a robust community response group. And I think with the right leadership, the right culture, we'll change it. Those that don't want to comply, that don't want to put the citizens' needs first, well, then they're probably not going to want to work for the Dan Wilson administration.
With all these plans that you have, you hit the ground running, and you've got you got a lot of work in front of you, deficiencies inside the department. So there's an uphill battle on that one also. Do you feel like that's going to be a compromise to your ability to communicate and serve the citizens of Kootenai County? So not just the work inside the department, because that's one thing that for Norris, he's said the most, what does he say? The most accessible.
Yeah.
And it's part of what he's campaigning on.
He has the most incompetent administration as well. I mean, when you have a lieutenant that's in charge of the air support unit that also happens to be the CFO and the registered agent of the agency private company that he's supposed to oversee, that's a problem. I mean, that's a serious problem, folks. We know people that have been promoted inside Bob's organization because of what they did for him. And that's why the Deputy Sheriff's Association is we're going to have a hard discussion, because the way their behavior has been so far, where Norris allowed them to use the Kootenai County Sheriff's badge on a mailer to be sent out to deceive people in the community to make it look like the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office was supporting public candidates, is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And you, the citizen, including my KCRCC friends, should be outraged at that behavior. The Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, the seal, the star, the reputation, the integrity will never be allowed to be for sale for anyone. Period. We're going to stop that crap right now.
There's still time to get your questions in the program. You can do that by putting it in the comment section on any platform you're joining us. A question coming from Instagram, Positive Shep. Thanks for watching with us tonight. Question for Dan. Will you increase the amount of deputies on shift to accommodate the massive amount of growth in the county? That's first question. Second one, how do you plan on keeping deputies working for the county long term?
Well, again, if you're talking about the county keeping them because of pay, we are going to make certain our deputies stay on scale for what the region will support, because we're going to have to cut at other areas. Obviously, we're not going to keep growing our budget like Bob Norris does year after year after year. But here's what we're going to change. And we know study after study has proven that people do not leave jobs just because of money, nor do they stay in jobs just because of the money. Now, my organization, we pay at the upper level. We're not the top payer, but we're right up in there. People stay with me because of the environment, the culture. And the culture inside the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is unacceptable. I'm hearing it from jailers. I'm hearing it from patrol. I'm hearing it from support staff, the non-sworn. So if you want to retain people at every level, you better have a culture where people have buy-in to the mission, where they feel like they have a purpose, that they have a future, that they have a career path. And we need to be providing that. But if you don't want to go to work every day and you hate it, well, then of course you're going to go wherever the dollar leads. But that shiny, star, so to speak, that you're chasing, after a while, it becomes tarnished everywhere you go. Culture is the most important aspect of the sheriff's office. Again, paying a good wage as well. And who better to oversee that than somebody that actually hires people for a living in my own business and retains people? So
Norris has been up to some interesting stunts today. Yep. Social media, we live in the generation, the world of social media. Okay, Broderick Pello. We're moving on to another segment at the moment, but he wants you to know that he's still waiting. I'm still waiting. Dan.
Well, we will have a discussion sooner or later, but I'm not real happy with your demeanor last week, so I may not get around to that, Broderick.
All right. So Sheriff Norris put up some interesting tidbits on social media today, and I can pull some things up on the screen to support walking through this one. So for anybody who hasn't seen this, doesn't have a frame of reference, why don't you let us know what we're looking at?
So I want folks to think about this for a second. Your sitting sheriff, chief law enforcement officer of the county, has a lot of power, a lot of prestige, a lot of responsibility, but he's also running a campaign right now. We have slide number 1, Norris. Ready to go.
Ready to go.
There are rules to campaigning. Your campaigning cannot be mixed up with your official capacity and your official position. So Bob Norris, if he is campaigning at all on his official county paid websites, that's a violation of law. But we've been seeing this lately where he does it continually. He comes out, for example, Blaine Holt. When Blaine Holt endorsed me, former Brigadier General Blaine Holt, immediately, early in the morning, he jumps on with his Kootenai County Sheriff's page, not his campaign page, but his sheriff page, and immediately starts disparaging Blaine Holt. Unacceptable. Well, he doesn't learn from anything that he's doing, whether it's giving resources from the county and giving them to be auctioned off at Republican women fundraisers, to name just a few, to where he's not doing it for the Democrats or for anybody else in this community, but he's doing it for those that are part of his political affiliation.
But I think people have not thought beyond the scope of what benefits them. So you're sitting in the Women's Republican Federated luncheon, and they're auctioning off some kind of asset from the sheriff's department. I'm going to use an example: a ride on the helicopter and some other stuff in this winning package.
It was a day on patrol, a day at the range, a day at the jail or SWAT. I mean, there was all sorts, because this has been ongoing for several years.
Yes. So think about this.
It's a violation of the law.
Let's say you have a Democratic elected sheriff, and they're the minority in your county. So you end up with a lot of angry Republicans because you have a Democratic sheriff that is using county resources to raise money through the Democratic Party to circle back around and support their reelection. That's not going to make you very happy. But I think people just have not, they're like, we're the majority here. We're going to control the outcome. So, hooray, we got the sheriff in our back pocket.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
I honestly think the majority of people, or the women at that luncheon, or the people at these other KCRCC events, they haven't even thought beyond the scope of this is what's benefiting the majority of us right now, so it doesn't matter to them.
What I have a problem with is nobody is holding Bob Norris accountable. Stan Mortensen, not keeping him accountable, because he's continuing to do this. He did this to us back in the Show Your Proof challenge from earlier this year, where he signed this challenge to me as Sheriff Bob Norris and told me that I have to show up to this. And when he had the event, it was a campaign event. It wasn't official business, because then I think it would be considered to be an abuse of power against a political candidate opponent of his. But remember that he was up there in his official capacity, not as candidate Bob Norris, but as Sheriff Bob Norris. And Bruce Matari wasn't there as Bruce Matari. He was there as Commissioner Bruce Matari. And Bryant Bushling, who is retired, wasn't referred to as Bryant Bushling. He was referred to as Deputy Prosecutor Bryant Bushling. And Bob Norris has done this bullying technique over and over and over again. You have the woman who filed a tort claim against the county and him back in July, $500,000, claiming that he said some extremely inappropriate, sexually charged terms about her. And what does he do a week later after she files his tort claim? In his official capacity as sheriff, he takes the Kootenai County Sheriff's letterhead and he writes a letter to the public that he releases saying, anybody that can find evidence to contradict what this woman, who is filing the claim against him, to exonerate him and his integrity, when he knew that nobody was recording there, or were they? Well, he said, I will donate $10,000 of my own money. But he's using the official capacity of the sheriff's office to do it. This is what a tyrant looks like. This is not a man that understands the importance and the role of the sheriff. Flat out, he doesn't. If he'll say vulgar and heinous things against somebody, as has been alleged, and then further substantiate his bullying by putting out a bounty against a citizen, he should have kept his mouth shut, but he doesn't know how to do it. So here we have a recent example that just came out today.
We're getting back to that.
Yeah, this was posted on his Facebook page. You can see at the top, it's his official one, Sheriff Bob Norris. He says, did you know that Idaho has laws against criminal libel and operating a corporate entity as a political action committee, PAC, when the entity is not registered as a PAC? The flyer is being distributed by Teresa Roth and supporters of one of my opponents. If you get it, throw it in the trash where it belongs. Don't trust any entity that does not put their leadership, executive director information on their website or their literature. Does that go for the Kootenai Journal as well? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, North Idaho News?
Yeah. Yep.
This flyer is full of lies and misinformation. The proper authorities have been notified. Don't trust any information that is distributed by an opponent ever. The political season is here. So you have a current sheriff under his authority, not only attacking a citizen who's promoting her own, free speech. She's not a PAC. She's somebody that's done her own research, and she's put out flyers, and she's saying, look, here's what my research is about Bob Norris, but he's going to go after a grandma, a homeschooling mom, a Catholic, because he doesn't like what she has to say about him. Kind of similar to, the Cataldo incident. And then he's going to tell people to throw it in the garbage. It's by one of my supporters, or by the supporters of one of my opponents. The flyer is full of lies and information. Don't trust any information that is distributed by an opponent ever. The political season is here. How do you folks feel? Those of you that are on the fence, that are the Bob Norris sycophants, that think that he does no wrong, how do you justify this abuse? If Dan Wilson were doing the same thing, you would be over the moon angry with this kind of behavior. But you're hypocrites now, aren't you? Because you won't hold him accountable. In fact, we can tell by all the typical responses that are going on. And you think that, it's okay for free speech to be, squelched when it's your guy. What happens when it comes to you? You guys are such hypocrites because you talk about all your outrage of the things that are happening nationally. But when it comes to your guy, well, there's an exception. Kind of like, allegations against abuse. Trump gets accused of something, and oh man, you know what? There should be evidence. You don't just trust somebody just because they make a statement. But then when it comes to Dan Wilson, you immediately come out with the knives, you hypocrites. You don't understand what's going on, and you run your mouths, and you continue to spread the lies. And this is what they're going to do because we're in election season right now. We know from past experience of 2020 what they did to Mike Bauer. In fact, let's go to slide number 2. I know we're going to run a little bit late here, but this is important. I'm going to bring this up again to talk about the integrity or lack thereof of Bob Norris. We're going to start this. This was happening during the 2020 election. Mike Bauer writes that on June 26, 2020, he received an email from Jaime Lopez, sheriff photographer, LASD, where both Captain Mike Bauer and Bob Norris worked. In the emails attached below, he states that Robert Bob Norris, a candidate for Kootenai County Sheriff, asked for private images of Bauer when he worked at LASD. Mr. Norris allegedly had said that he needed the images for Bauer because allegedly Bauer's house was flooded and all of his LASD images were ruined. Now, we'll go to the second slide there. I guess there's second page of that slide. And we have this post by Jaime Lopez. He says, "Hello, sir. On Tuesday, June 6th, I received a text from Bob Norris asking to call him. When I called him, he requested photos of a retired captain and told me that he would text me the info later. See screenshots and text. Later that day, he texted me your info. He said that your house had a flood and your LASD photos were damaged. He requested photos of you from our LASD files." Here are images of those screenshots of text messages. But here's what happened. On June 17th, Jaime replied to the text indicating that he would look for the files. The following Tuesday, the 23rd, he sent a follow-up text. So basically what he does is he sends those images. You can see Bob Norris's text message and phone up here, the 208-770-0171. Don't know if that's still active. He's still looking and see if they could find it. The next day he emailed the 4 photos, but Jaime says, "Hey, I Googled your name and found out through your website you were running for sheriff against Bob Norris. I texted Bob Norris to let him know he didn't mention the election." The response from Bob Norris is, "It's a friendly race." So we'll make this available for download.
I don't know if that it says right above that because this is from Jaime, that photographer, to Bob Norris, and he said that you didn't mention you are running for sheriff against Mike Bauer.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think that got a little bit.
I was trying to be brief, but we're going to make this available for the download. In fact, I'd like to put this up tomorrow on our website so that we can download this, because it's an integrity issue that Bob Norris has continually been flanked by for his entire time he has been surrounded by the sheriff's race. I mean, this is an integrity issue. You lied, Bob, and everybody gave you a pass in 2020, probably because they were, oxygen asphyxiated from the masks. But what you did was wrong. You lied to try to fraudulently obtain property that was not your own. And then you got caught. So this is kind of the dirty stuff that Bob Norris does. And then we're going to go to, I think it's the number 6 slide real quick, while we're on this vein, to talk about who Bob Norris is. Now, when I entered the race, I knew that people were going to come after me with anything and everything, because that's what happens when you're in a high-profile race. But I have never scrubbed anything of mine off the internet. In fact, I've put more stuff on the internet to drive people towards my name, Dan Wilson, in Kootenai County than anybody else has. But I want you to look at this itemized expenditure report that Bob Norris's campaign filed back in January of 2020 for expenses that occurred the end of November, first part of December. And if you go down to the very bottom, on the 23rd of December, 2019, Bob Norris spent $3,000 of campaign money to Reputation Defender. Now, we know that Reputation Defender is a service that helps scrub unwanted information off the web. Now, if Bob Norris had all these high security clearances that he frequently likes to brag about, top secret clearances, then why would you need to clean anything about yourself off the internet? Seems a little suspect to me, doesn't it?
It does. And, we get the comments that, look, come on, Dan, we already know you don't like Norris, but you got to do something more than mudslinging. I would argue, and look, and that's exactly it. When we're showing you documentation right here of what's being reported, that $3,000 of campaign funds were being spent to Reputation Defender to scrub information off the internet, that is called facts, evidence, and information. Mm-hmm. That's not mudslinging.
Yeah.
So you have to have somebody that says, okay, I'm running this race because I know that I'm qualified in the job that I can do to lead that department. But then also, when there's immorality and lack of ethics in the current administration that you're uncovering along the way, you have a responsibility and due diligence to bring that to the taxpayers and to the voters.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
he was recently asked this question at a town hall. We have it on video. The question was asked by another career law enforcement professional, retired. And he asked Bob, what's more important as a sheriff, experience or character? And what did he say?
They're equal.
They're equal. So I would argue to the folks, by the current sheriff's own words, if experience and character are right here, I've shown you just a little bit of his character, his inability to tell the truth, his, I guess, ability to go after those that he doesn't like in his official capacity, using the full color of his office. In fact, I think it's funny. We had this event last Monday night where Nate Lewis got to come up and speak about the innocent. Mm-hmm. He was given this presentation, and it was made clear not only from the MC of the North Idaho Freedom Fighters, but also from Nate Lewis himself. This is not a political event. I went there completely to hear what was being said, not to run my mouth. And we were told many, many times, don't talk. This isn't about the sheriff's race. Don't even talk about it here amongst yourselves. This is only for the innocent. Well, who comes up and commandeers the mic? Well, none other than Bob Norris, because he cannot control himself. He bullies his way into everything. Who's going to tell the sitting sheriff, who has denied that human trafficking has taken place in Kootenai County for well over a year, but he's going to bully his way up there, because who's going to tell him no when he's going to offer his stats? And I'm going to give you another example. A week previously, there was an event at the Altar Church in Spokane, Fraudulent slip.
Fraudulent.
Fraudulent. Freudian slip. An event at the Altar Church in Kootenai for the Kootenai Stability Resiliency Group. And they were talking about their organization, which is getting people in the community prepared for anything. Well, Bob Norris had an event that was supposed to be up at Spirit Lake. I got a call from some Spirit Lake residents. They sent me this flyer. Bob was supposed to have a town hall up there, and he was a no-show. People were there waiting. They didn't know that it had been canceled. But where was Bob Norris? Bob Norris was down where he could hobnob with those that are very concerned about being prepared for anything. And when he gets up there, same thing. We were told it's not a political event. But what does he do? He goes up, gets the opportunity, runs his mouth at the mic, and we should play those clips sometime, where he says basically, well, you know, we've been kind of hands off because we really didn't know who your board members were. And, you know, we want to see that on your website before we decide that we're going to work with you. And then at the conclusion, he has to get up one more time uninvited. Now, here's the irony. When Blaine Holt came out and endorsed me, and Blaine Holt has started this group, K-Surge, what does Bob do to Holt when Holt comes out and endorses me? He says some extremely heinous things against Blaine. Calls him a globalist, says that, you know, disparages his service, etc. But Bob's balls are so big that he goes up there without any shame, despite the fact of the way he has treated Blaine Holt, commandeers the mic, and then immediately he's seen the light. We share so much of the same mission. You know, we're gonna work really good together because Bob is a professional con man. He's a politician. And he uses his office and his authority continually to bully people over and over and over again. Just like when he sent a former detective and a cohort into the Patriot Hangout here a couple weeks ago after they found out that Mike from the Patriot Hangout was endorsing me on my team. And he sends in these goons to try to strong arm him into holding an event for Bob Norris. This is the crap that goes on over and over and over again. So I would caution those that see things online by a small, very small group of people that have a lot to lose when their sheriff is changed. They're not going to be in the popular club anymore. Those that surround themselves at certain key churches in this area, and you know who you are at those churches, you understand that there's a lot of prestige that you're going to lose because your boy isn't in the sheriff's office anymore cutting special deals for y'all. So I get it. I get it when the FOP president's mother continually goes on over and over and over, never realizing that very soon I will be her son's boss. You know, you probably shouldn't be doing the things that you're doing. You have a right, free speech-wise, to do it. It's not very wise, and people see through your deceit. But those that are solidly in the Norris camp and accuse my team of mudslinging, you are the ones that sling mud. I am so proud of my supporters and my volunteers who are people of integrity, that are courageous, that are hardworking, that love their community, and they're not a part of the tribe. Because that's really what it is. The KCRCC and certain churches and those members that go between the two don't necessarily care about the overall message of liberty without compromise. They say they do, but they don't do it in practicality. They're a tribe. You can show them two things side by side, the truth and something that's not the truth, and they're convinced because of their tribal instincts that or tendencies that this is their guy. It doesn't matter.
I do want to, on that note, say you've got to pay attention to when Bob Norris, a document's coming out or a news article or a post, and he merely comes out to the public as Sheriff Bob Norris and says, don't trust any of these sources. This is misinformation. Mm-hmm. He's never brought any response to whether they're accusations or things being said about him to just come out and make a public statement, go down point by point. You're the elected official. Mm-hmm. You're responsible. He's the one who's responsible to answer when people have those questions or if those things are being said about him. Otherwise, we the people are in a position of basically he can do anything he wants. And if anybody brings out any negative press or a question that he doesn't like, you just say, you're a spreader of disinformation. You're not an accurate source. I'm not going to take your question. I'm not going to answer that. It's false.
Bob Norris is the Biden administration.
Whereas you have been accused early on in the campaign of some very heinous things.
Yes.
On the complete reverse, you have actually brought physical evidence to discount, discredit, and immediately dispel. And what's happening 10 months later, they're reigniting this in the last few weeks of the campaign, which you will continue to counteract and stand strong and say, I brought you the truth 10 months ago. It's the same truth today. Here you go. Here's the documentation. Here's the response. We already know where they're going with it. Yeah. So Bob Norris has never once done that. No. He'll fool you into believing that in March he held an event and he somehow did, when in reality he showed you nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, I have a 13% shoulder injury from sign waving.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to pay you $180,000 a year. And here's an example. Captain Mike Bauer retired after 30 plus years at LASD. Captain, way higher rank than Bob Norris. He was a stud. He was a captain of intelligence and major crimes in the Special Enforcement Bureau. This guy was what they made TV shows about once upon a time. Well, he's come out, and I'm starting to lose my train of thought. Help me out here, because I was waxing on about how great Bauer was.
Well, and then I'm reading comments up.
But anyway, so we know that what they're going to do in these.
You were going to give a comparison because Norris supporters are like, you idiot, you don't understand how that retirement works. He worked for that. He worked every day for that, and that's what he deserved. And how dare you even question why he's receiving that amount?
Thank you for catching me back on.
You're welcome. And I'm dramatic about it.
Yeah. So here's the deal. If anybody could have claimed an injury, it would have been Mike Bauer. Mm-hmm. But Mike Bauer and I were having this very conversation today, and he said, I could have done that. I could have come up with something to have had an injury, but he didn't. So the question is, when is Bob Norris going to produce the official documents of what your disability is? How do we know that it's just shoulder injury with as emotionally unstable as you are, Bob? And also, what were the conditions of your settlement, which you've never produced, which tells me you're hiding them. If you can't produce them, you refuse to produce them, then you're hiding something. And I'm not going to quit until you produce the official documents, which he did not do that night at the Show Your Proof event, the one that was meant to bully me. He showed one guy a portion of some document that we don't know. But we know that this is going to come to a head here in a couple of weeks. We know the more desperate that the Norris team feels and his Deputy Sheriff's Association, we know that they're going to put the hit pieces out. They did it to Mike Bauer back in 2020. The Deputy Sheriff's Association, their political action committee, funds these flyers to go out against the opposition, and they have a lot to lose. So when you see these mailers in the mail that are undoubtedly going to come out, he'll probably let them use the sheriff's badge again so that they believe that they're truly people in the public believe that it's coming from the sheriff. Don't believe it. When you see accusations that are magically dropped, well, our team is ready to answer those. We'll do a podcast here coming up to set records straight.
Yep.
But we're not going to be bullied by anybody. So I'm going to make this last statement here. For those of you online that are talking about disclosing sealed court documents, anybody that releases sealed court documents online or anywhere, you will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, and I will make certain that there is justice if you release any information that you are not privileged to have. Now, I was fortunate enough to get majority custody of my children, my minor children, back in 2017. I've been very quiet about the circumstances around that. But for any reason, you put my family in jeopardy by disclosing any kind of sealed documents that you are not authorized to have, there will be consequences. And I want to be very, very loud and clear to those of you that are running your mouths right now on social media. You will be held accountable.
We do have some other questions coming in. I will say we've gone way far over the hour that we typically do. So I think we need to cut it off at some point. Broderick, I am just going to do a final statement for Broderick.
What's he saying? I'd like you to read some of the stuff so that people can hear what's being said.
He wants you to talk more about yourself, less about Norris, and there's more to it than that. But I do want to direct you to our website. We didn't all just wake up 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We have run the most substantive campaign that Kootenai County has ever seen. Yeah. And I dare you to prove it otherwise. Our website is so full of facts, information, and goes in deep about who Dan Wilson is, his ethics, his morals, the substance of who he is as a person. And there are weeks of archived live stream broadcasts that do just that.
Look, I'd argue and say he's an attorney. Let's not sit
here and pretend.
Broderick, you're an attorney as I understand it. I understand where you're going with it. We had some exchanges early on. I know that you grew up in this area. I mean, I understand you probably have ties to deputies here, but we're not going to play this game anymore. We're far too along in this race, and people that truly want to understand and know things, they've had full access to me for a long time, and this behavior, especially spamming from a professional, is just not going to be tolerated.
But for all those of you listening in, you can go to our website that has a very robust built-in search function. Type in any keyword or phrase, and you're going to find lots more information if it's something that we didn't touch on tonight. I'm going to hit one more question because it's been sitting up here for a while since we got off on some other segments, and we'll try to answer this if it's possible to do it quick. Why is from Nicholas over on Facebook, thanks for joining us. Why is the KCRCC still ignoring the comments and actions by Norris and still endorsing him?
Because he is the linchpin for the entire organization. Think about this. When Dan Wilson is elected sheriff, I will have proven that you no longer have to be part of the KCRCC to be a conservative, somebody that loves your country, that wants to run and make a difference. You don't have to be a part of that organization anymore, and they're very scared about it. They've known that he's a part of this I think, a upcoming lawsuit, as the sheriff has alluded to on social media, this tort claim. We know there's a lot of things going on, despite the fact that he backstabbed the KCRCC and they lost 30 of their PCs to North Idaho Republicans. Not disparaging North Idaho Republicans. I'm just merely stating they were the recipients of this. They are the arch enemy of the KCRCC. But Brent Reagan and his group can't afford to lose Bob Norris. He is their main attraction. So help me defeat the KCRCC, who has lost its way. It is no longer the organization that it could have been, where we have true representatives that walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. I think that we have the greatest chance ever of electing a man that's not only a conservative, a true conservative. If you even look at the side-by-side comparisons on the KCRCC survey that we posted on the idahosheriff.com, you can see how much Bob really doesn't know about being a sheriff or limited government or Republican principles. At the end of the day, we have the greatest chance ever of taking care of the people in this county for the times that we are coming into, the hard times. You have to ask yourself, are you willing to continue to follow this bumbling knucklehead that has done nothing in the past 4 years of any substance other than having town hall coffee meetings in the middle of the week, 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, where he brings 12 of his command staff at thousands of dollars an event because he can't sit and carry the conversation as the sheriff? You know, people are going to ask such technical questions. He's doesn't understand what he's doing. His agency, the department, is suffering for it. His budgets are out of control. He can't keep staff. In fact, one last thing that I'm going to talk about, we won't throw it up here, but I want to throw this out here. And this is, what are we currently looking at when it comes to how many people we have at the sheriff's office? There are close to 50 vacancies across the entire board at Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. We are down the following: 27 deputies, 27 sworn vacancies at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, 23 non-sworn, that's the support staff, 50 people. Despite the pay raises and the better benefits, they're not staying. People are quitting. In fact, I've received emails from those that have recently quit, and they've told me what's going on. And it wasn't for the money issue. So Let's look at some other stats real quick here before we wrap it up. This year, the number of deputies that have quit, 8. 8 deputies have quit this year alone. I thought pay was everything, Bob. Number of deputies that have retired, 4. That's 12. We know that the jail is suffering tremendously. There's close to 20 in vacancy there. We've had jailers come in and tell us, look, this 12-hour shift that was started under Rocky Watson, that was 2 sheriffs or 3 sheriffs ago, 2 sheriffs before Bob. I mean, you have forced overtime. It's dangerous. The guys are worn out. Fix the problem, Bob. You haven't done it in 4 years. But you want us to believe that somehow magically you're going to fix it now? You haven't done it to date, despite your pay raises. So
we've got a couple of events coming up. If you're like, hey, listening to Dan and Donna for an hour and 22 minutes and 59 seconds just wasn't quite enough. We've got a rally coming up that we are so excited about. I feel like this rally has been a year in the making, and we're so excited to see you there. That's going to be on Monday, the 21st at North Idaho College. There's more information about that event as to the exact location on campus there on our website at theidahosheriff.com, or you can RSVP to the event on Facebook. And there's a couple other things coming up. Go to the website to check those out. Why don't you leave us with an encouraging word, and then I'll take us out to the end here.
We are Americans. We come from extremely good people. They come across every kind of spectrum and background, ethnicity. All men are equal in worth. Every man and woman has the right to, and child has the right to life, liberty, and property. So when you see troubling times ahead, fight, do what you have to stay above the fray, fight for what you believe in, but most importantly, do not lose hope. Don't lose courage, because we didn't descend from fearful men. We descended from men who understood the times, they acted accordingly, and they pledged their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. We all have family that has served. And I'm so proud to be an American. I love being an American. I love my fellow citizens. Stay hopeful. We're going to get through this together, united. God bless you all. May God bless Kootenai County, and may God bless America.
Man, that Broderick Pello was giving us the business tonight. Did we deserve it?
Nah.
Thank you for joining us tonight on the Idaho Sheriff Livestream broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. We're here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And the best place to watch archive broadcasts is on our YouTube channel. That's at the Idaho Sheriff. Go to YouTube to listen and subscribe. And then also for the Idaho Sheriff podcast, listen and subscribe wherever you usually get those shows. You can listen in your car or the shower or wherever. Podcast listeners watch live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. and you can interact with us here. Learn more about Dan Wilson, his platform, policies, viewpoints, and endorsements at theidahosheriff.com. That was a doozy.
Send your complaints to info@theidahosheriff.com. Broderick, I'm certain you have more than your share. We may or may not look through those.
He's willing to have his mind changed.
Okay. I hope he's sincere. I do know that there are some people surrounding him that are extremely sincere and brilliant individuals.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Somebody that he could be proud of.
Sign of hope. Very true.
Let's go have a cigar.
All right, let's do it.
God bless.